Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, or maybe good night, whichever part of the world you are joining from. This is the first episode of my series Q&A with Naval. Um, this is your humble host, Naval, and I am holding a plate of pies. Uh, so those who got the reference, you are awesome. Those who haven't, it's quite uncertain what this picture is about, and I'll leave you with that. Uh, I had reached out to you earlier through a survey to get your questions on quantum computing, and I got a very good response. A few people were confused about why quantum and does IBM do quantum computing. Uh, so I found an area where I could jump in and speak about this topic. Uh, on this podcast or on this webcast or episode, I'm dividing the content into two parts. One is curiosity, very aptly named, very pun centric curiosity. This segment will have me answering your question or showing you around how you can find answer to the question if I can't. Second section would be curated, where I'll share with you a couple of resources. These resources may not be hardcore quantum, but will have some relation with quantum computing, which I have read or watched, and I'll share them with you so that if you have some time, you can read those resources. So with this uncertain photograph of me holding a couple of pies, or maybe 4 pies, you never know. Let's get started. So I'll switch between this deck, which I'm showing right now, and the browser. Because on the browser, I have a multitude of tabs open on which I have some content which I want to showcase to you. So let's get started. Yes, so I asked all of you, I requested you to send me questions, and I got many questions, and I put a couple of them on screen over here. So somebody asked me about spooky action at a distance, the most famous words spoken by Einstein. I would answer that question. Another question, how to work on these trio from India to tier cities, and just pasting the questions exactly verbatim without any format or any touch up on questions. How to work on these trio from India to tier cities, quantum, blockchain, and AI. Very good question. I'll try to answer that question in this episode. Then there's a question, how many computation steps till the quantum chips gets too much heat to produce results? Interesting. Another question, details about quantum computing. Okay, fine. I'll take a shot at that sometime soon. Why does internet need blockchain? I don't know why somebody put this question in the survey, but anyway, I'll take a shot at it in a miscellaneous part of this some podcast. About data science, maybe, again, not a relevant question, but still I'll take this question. And a question, what's the difference between the very first IBM computer and quantum computing? So we're trying to understand how bits and bytes and qubits work. So let me take the first question. How to work on these trio from India's, the one which is highlighted here, or India's in second tier cities, which I guess somebody who has written this question wants to know whether access to these resources is possible. So dear friend, whosoever has sent this question, thank you so much. I work for IBM Cloud, so there couldn't be a question more relevant than this for me to answer. Quantum, blockchain, and AI are fulfilled through IBM Cloud as a delivery model. So you can try out IBM Watson through a bunch of APIs, visual recognition, speech to text, NLU, Discovery, Watson Studio, you name it, through IBM Cloud. Most of these services are on free tier. That means you can just create an account with your email address and get started. blockchain, well, you can, if you can create a cluster, you can deploy Hyperledger there, or you can deploy Hyperledger locally on your computer by cloning a Git repository and trying it out. But still, yes, if you have a strong internet connection, and occasionally good internet connection will work as well, then you can try out blockchain as well. So accessibility to a tier 1 city in India, or being in tier 1 city in the world may not be necessary. If you have some time, you can watch a couple of videos on YouTube. You can do a couple of courses on different websites like cognitiveclass.ai, like edX, Coursera, you name it. So I don't think. Same is true for quantum as well. There are two ways to experience this. Number one is through Quantum Experience, which is hosted on Bluemix.net or IBM Cloud. It was called Bluemix earlier. So you can play around with qubits and drag and drop a couple of qubits and see what is the response. You can run that experiment, run the simulation. It will ask you to log in through IBM Cloud account or LinkedIn or any social login. So it's something that I request you to try it out. It's delivered through cloud, so you don't need to be around a machine that has around a quantum computer actually. So second is through Qiskit. Qiskit is available as a, if you are compatible with Python, then Qiskit is something I would always advise. If you are using Visual Studio Code, use deploy Qiskit as it's an extension which is available. You can deploy and run your application, a Hello World application on Visual Studio Code. Any support, there is a Slack channel where people are more than happy to answer those questions. I see a lot of people trying out experiments using either Qiskit or Quantum Experience, whichever way. I would prefer Qiskit because if it's like with 10 or 15 variable, 10 or 15 qubit or 10 qubit problem, when you have to configure all of them, then doing it manually would become a hassle for you, and then saving it and then retrying it again. Writing a quick Python script would be better, would be more convenient, I believe. So to answer your question, how to work on this trio from India to cities? Well, use IBM Cloud. And so that's this week's curiosity. Let's jump to Curated. So Curated is a funny acronym for, it's an acronym for the kind of content which I have brought together. And these are the content that I have personally tried out and then I'm sharing it with you. So there are 4 books that I have personally read, and I'm showing them here on the screen. First is Molecular Quantum Mechanics. That's why there's a heart on this book, because I love this book. So by Peter Atkins and Ronald Friedman. So if you love to experience things by solving mathematical problems like numericals, people like me who love Resnick Halliday or SL Loney for trigonometry, Resnick Halliday for physics, they like to solve a couple of problems to figure out how stuff works. So I like this book. It has a lot of solved problems and a lot of exercises as well. So you can figure out these quantum mechanics and problems by solving numericals. So if that is your cup of tea, go to this book. The New Quantum Age talks about a lot of technologies and how they are changing the world. And so it talks about how quantum will drive change in computing, quantum will drive change in communication, and so on and so forth. So again, it's a book, not a textbook kind of a book. Quantum chemistry, again, a hardcore textbook. I have tried it out. So I would recommend this to you. Again, if you are enthusiastic, if you have some time, if you have a spare weekend. And if you're tired of all these 3, you shouldn't get tired of the first one. Then definitely Quantum, The Guide for the Perplexed by Jim Al-Khalili. It's a nice, cozy reading book. Doesn't scare you with too many numbers, too many problems or anything. It's a very fast read, and I liked it. So that's a 4th book that I would advise you, if as a part of my curated content to try it out if you have some time. You see a photograph uh, of a teacher drawing two cubes here. So it's my favorite moment from the PhD movie. If you have seen the PhD movie, pretty awesome. Both part one and part two. This is a scene from part two, where she talks about uh, do I say quantum properties, and she then there's a guy who's sleeping and she throws chalk at the guy. So that's what I will say. So, but yes, there's a very short reference, like few seconds. So if you want to see that, I'm a big fan of the movie, so I would recommend you go and download a copy of this movie and watch it. This is something that I want to talk to you about. It's the Quantum Horizons project, and they have opened up for registrations for the kickoff session on 29th and 30th of October. I'll show this on the web page actually. So that's all from the deck side. Let's jump into browser. So it's next. Well, keep sending me questions. You can scan this code to send me questions. Join the like-minded folks at Qiskit@slack.com. And let me end the show here and start with browser. So, well, what is quantum? If somebody asks you, or if you wonder yourself, what is quantum? Wikipedia defines quantum as the minimum amount of any physical entity involved in an interaction. Quantization is a hypothesis. It links it to when you try to find the absolute fundamental minimum undestructible part of a matter or of any property, and you call that as a quantization of this entire mass or length or time. So that quantum is the smallest particle or minimum amount of any physical entity. So an apt definition, then it talks about quantum electrodynamics. A very good example of calling photon of light as a light quantum. It would give you an idea that photon is the smallest particle of light, assuming that you expect or you believe light to be a particle. Many experiments, diffraction grating experiment, the double slit experiment, they show light as a wave because you see bands of darkness and lightness. So if you call light as a particle, but photoelectric effect shows light as particle. So depending on what you consider light as, let's keep it open for debate. Photon as a fundamental element of light. So that is a good example of light quantum, the absolute minimum amount of any physical entity. So with this, let's jump into quantum mechanics. And around a decade and a half ago, 15 years ago, when I was in my graduation and I was in the first year of my physics bachelor's, and I was going through classical mechanics and quantum mechanics along with other subjects like heat and thermodynamics. I was very intrigued by the relation of, and you know, they teach quantum in universities through light experiments. They subtly bring in the idea of quantum. Quantum can be approached from many directions. Quantum technology, let me say, or quantum theory can be approached through quantum chemistry. When you talk about N, L, M, and all these elements of the variables that define particular spin of an atom. So S is plus and minus half. N is the number of orbitals. L is minus n to plus n, and M is 2l plus 1. Yeah, M is 2l plus 1. These are all magnetic number, the spin, and all the stuff. So, and S is plus minus half depending on how the particle or how the atom is spinning. That's how they introduce students to quantum physics, usually through physics, rather through chemistry. And you can also get into quantum theory through mathematics if you want to get into through solving partial differential equations and trying to find integrals and stuff, but usually through physics. So this page brought back a lot of good memories for me. I never hoped that a decade and a half later I would be talking about quantum mechanics to people, but it's a fundamental theory in physics which describes nature at the smallest scale of energy. I hope there is force theory as well. There is some article, of course, there is Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Let me see if I have opened that page of forces. I don't think so. So, as the fundamental forces at impact, quantum field theory. So, as the fundamental forces like gravity, nuclear forces, weak forces, strong forces, and how they are trying to now quantify gravity, find what is the fundamental particle that creates attraction, gravitational pull. Talks about hadrons like protons and neutrons and subatomic particles and action at that level, and how it becomes really funny. How all the what are gluons and how that creates how do they create attraction between particles. So that is something that I hope I have kept the forces, quantum forces. Yeah, fundamental interaction. And actually, I have a page from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, I guess. This one? No, this is the PhD movie. This one. So I would recommend this page. This is a very apt answer to how fundamental forces impact particles on quantum level and whether they impact particles on quantum level. It's hosted on UIUC, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Pretty dated one, around 11 years old, but still very relevant. It talks about the fundamental forces and what are gluons, how gravity and how people are trying to find what are the fundamental part, how does matter get mass. So I don't want to get into too much in that, but this is something good for you to see. Fundamental interaction, the most fundamental field theories in physics for you to understand how different elements in nature interact with each other. Gravitation, weak forces, electromagnetic forces, strong forces, and how do they act, where they act at large distance, where they act at smaller distance. So I don't know much about the grand unified story, to be honest, and how they're bringing all four together, and an advanced scientist or a professor can answer that question. But I do know about standard model, I do know about gravitational forces, and then all the other three forces and interaction between them, general theory of relativity. So that's where you get the real charm of quantum coming in. So anyone who is trying to get to understand quantum computing should first understand the quantum theory. And to understand quantum theory, you will have to start by mechanics. And mechanics, you will first delve into classical mechanics, laws of motion, and gravity and stuff. And then you'll understand that these forces or these laws are for large size bodies, which are like at human scale or larger bodies. When you go smaller and smaller, those particles behave differently. And that's where classical theory fails to answer those questions. And then quantum comes into the picture. So it's a very physics driven discussion. And then you get into quantum theory and then you understand how, again, you get into light and wave particle duality, and then you understand Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You can't, when a photon interacts with another particle, uh, which is much smaller and of comparable size and weight, it impacts the momentum of that original particle. So by the time that photon hits that particle and comes back to your retina, that particle has moved. So you cannot find the location and momentum of the particle together. You can either get one or the other. Then you can get into microscope, the concept of microscope. How does compound microscope or any advanced microscope detect these small cell items? Electron microscope, how does electron microscope work? That's where all the fun begins. And then you get it deeper into quantum theory and you understand mathematically how does it work. Then you find how does Planck constant create an identity of fundamental particle like a quantum or a quanta, if I can say. And then you quantize things, especially electrons or photons. That's where the fun begins. And then you get deeper and then you understand the applications of quantum theory, and then you understand quantum computing, you understand quantum communication, then you have application in healthcare, and you can then go deeper and deeper and deeper. But that's how I believe anyone who wants to understand quantum computing or any quantum effect should start their journey. Ideally through physics. So physics, usually mathematics is the queen of all sciences, and physics comes next, is the jewel, if I can say, from sciences. So if you are very good in mathematics and physics, it's a big world for you to explore. Okay, so long story short, good article, good question, very good explanation, a great question as mentioned by Tom, very well explained, and it also brings Higgs boson and interaction into perspective in the very last as a post step to the question. So do read them. I'll put all the links in some Google Docs file or some file and share it with all. Then comes a more recent one. After all those old and classical stuff, let's get to more recent. So Talia was on stage at her alma mater, MIT. She did her bachelor's in engineering from MIT, and she was back at MIT, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. But because I saw this video just yesterday, where she talks about how quantum computing is getting accessible. She talks about democratization of quantum computing and how it's delivered via cloud, and then she shows a couple of charts, and then she shows how the adoption grew as they exposed quantum to people through quantum experience requests and Qiskit. So this is a very good video by MIT Technology Review. Do watch it. It's not very long, around half an hour, I guess. So this is something that I would encourage you to give a watch. If you have some time and if you want to read a longer essay, I would recommend this essay by The Economist. This essay here, Economist, I guess Jason Palmer, he talks about quantum technology and how it's coming out of lab and what are its applications. It goes pretty deep into its origins, its journey. It talks about at present who all are working on this technology. It talks about different countries, so you can see how much each country is spending on quantum technology. You will see the countries from Asia, countries from Europe, countries from North America, countries from South America, all putting in funds into quantum technology research. Then it talks about different companies which are working. I think it talks about IBM. It talks about D-Wave. It talks about, it gives a very unbiased and complete picture of quantum computing at present. So, and it just goes on and on and on. It has lots of good visualizations. This is a very good long read if you want to know more about quantum computing. So do give this a read. I would recommend this to someone who wants to know more. There is one more article. I haven't opened it. Let me pull it up. Uh, just go to Google and search for wired quantum. So the complete wired guide. Yes, yes. This is the page. So so let's jump back. There's a lot of stuff to cover. So this is the essay by Economist. This is the article by Wired. So again, it's a very long read. If you have lots of time, by Tom Simonite. If you have lots of time, do sit back and read it. It's explaining quantum in a very simple way. Um, for me, Neil deGrasse Tyson is the hero. He explains space to me in a very simple language. Um, I would want to give a shout out to Star Talk, uh, his podcast, an awesome podcast. If you don't listen to Star Talk, you should start listening to Star Talk. Best way of explaining science in a very simple to understand language, and Neil deGrasse Tyson is phenomenal. Anyway, so this page, Wired Guide to Quantum Computing, again, it shows what technology is about. It shows a photograph of IBM quantum computer, and then it goes with the history of quantum computing. It shows how it is evolved, and then it goes on and on and on, and what the future holds, and good stuff, basically. So again, this is something that I would advise you to read if you are absolute beginner and you want to see what is the recent stuff on quantum computing. Read this. There was an article on TechCrunch, I guess published after Disrupt SF San Francisco 2 weeks ago, and it's very optimistic. It says reality is just 3 years away. I hope this is true, because people have been saying that about blockchain becoming absolute part of everyone's daily life for a while, but it has taken so long. So I hope this becomes uh, very commonplace in just 3 years. And again, it has quotes from Dario Gil, the CEO of IBM Research, Chad Righetti as well. He was an IBMer. He has founded Righetti Computing, and then shows how US and China both are inventing and patenting innovations in computing next wave on quantum computing, and then it just goes on and on and on. So again, this is again something that I would recommend you to read and watch this video. Good stuff. So curated. So this is the curated part of my Q&A podcast. Next is this quantum flagship project. This is something I want to talk to you about. If you go to quantum flagship website, which is here, it's the future of quantum computing, I must say, and Europe is definitely taking large strides in ensuring that it becomes pioneer, or it's a flag bearer for quantum computing. So they talk about second quantum revolution. Just recently, they have released quantum technology roadmap. There's a flagship kickoff happening on 29th and 30th of October. Last date to register is 25th of September, which is 2 days from today. I guess 25th September. Yeah, registration closes 25th of September. Go ahead and register here. If you are around Vienna, yeah, if you're in and around Vienna, do go ahead and register here. They'll confirm by first and stuff. So it's a great agenda. It will give you a good introduction into what they are planning and how they plan to go ahead. If you want to see what they have thought of doing, there is a white paper. This they have uploaded a paper called Supporting Quantum Beyond 2020, and it's a 28-page white paper. I would recommend you to go and read this. This shows what are the areas they are planning to go ahead with. I liked quantum computing, number one. Number two, quantum communication. So they're talking about quantum key. Let me see, where is QKD? QKD. as quantum key distribution here. They talk about entanglement distribution, backbone networks, and as we see communication becoming more and more public oriented, public centric, I would believe quantum communication part coming at par with quantum computing. And then they have other quantum simulation and other projects as well. Uh, and they have estimated what kind of cost they will be incurring and stuff. So it's a good paper for you to read. So, and the university is working along with research organizations. So very good. So these are, I guess, 6 areas they have identified. Number 1 is quantum communication. Number 2 is quantum computation, greater than 100 qubit quantum computers and machines, quantum simulation, quantum measurement, quantum control, and quantum software and theory. So these are 6 areas. If you want to be a part of this initiative, first of all, go ahead and click on this and sign up for the newsletter so that you get updated and you get continuous news from this initiative. And if you want to contribute to Quantum Flagship team, go and join the working group, please. So it's on this page. You can just search or click on newsroom. There's a tab there. You can click on that and you can come to this page. So they have divided quantum working groups into 2 bigger clusters. One is the Quantum Flagship SRA working group, where they talk about all these 6 subcommittees like communication, computation, simulation, sensing, software and theory. So that's the first part. Second part is where we interact more with people and try to get public support, to try to create awareness, to do workshops. So that's the Innovation Working Group Committee, where you connect with existing trade associations, sessions and stuff. So you can join either of this. Just drop a note to Rob or Thierry over here. The email addresses are linked here. So send them a quick note, and if you want to be a part of this initiative, I would encourage you to join these working groups from wherever you are watching this first episode of QnA. Then they have written a couple of articles, and there's an upcoming workshop in Netherlands. So a lot of action happening in Europe. This is in 3rd week of November. So all of this part of the Quantum Flagship project. Do go ahead and watch this and read this and stay in touch with this. This is a part of my curated list of things for you to look into. Next is the Helmholtz notebook. The 4 pages, I guess, which are contributed back, and they are listed here. Sadly, they are in German and I can't read German. The great scientist who lived an incredibly renowned life, and his original handwritten papers have been released. You can see them here. Yes, and this is a translation in German. Sadly, my German is really weak. Apart from Danke and Achtung, maybe, or Gute Nacht, maybe. That's it. I don't know much German. So this was a refreshing article. So if you know about Helmholtz Foundation, good. If you don't, go ahead and read. They're working on quantum computing. And this article is, again, it talks about Helmholtz and his work on this topic of quantum theory. I'll put this in a link for you to go through if you understand the language. Good for you. I'll try to use maybe translate to get some stuff. So that is curated. Richard Feynman, one of my favorite scientists and one of my favorite scientists, and his works on quantum computing are phenomenal. He won Nobel Prize for that. I read his book called Surely You Are Joking, Mr. Feynman. It's a very light-hearted take on his life and how he and all the adventures and misadventures he had in his life. So I would recommend this book if you want to know a bit more about Richard Feynman. Again, this has nothing to do with quantum computing, but just as a light read, I would recommend you to read this book on Richard Feynman. There is a video on daily motion. I don't know whether you have seen this video or not. This is again one of my favorite videos. It's called The Pleasure of Finding Things Out. I think it's a documentary. I have watched this like dozen times, and every time I'm amazed by the clarity of thought, the kind of idea, the kind of passion Richard exhibits in this video, and how he explains that there's a beauty at molecular level, at atomic level, at subatomic level as well, apart from the beauty at larger level. So he explains how um, uh, his parents let him figure things out rather than telling him or teaching him. And he talks about how teaching should be like that. I wish I could have sat in this class, but one of the best teachers you could ever have, Richard Feynman. So this is a video, around a 49-minute long video called "The Pleasure of Finding Things Out." So if you have some time, I would recommend you to watch this video, just for the sheer joy of listening to Richard Feynman. Um, next, this is the Qiskit model that IBM has developed. Um, there is an IBMer working on this technology here. Uh, I guess I would want this calculator, if I can put the word. You know, in college you would have your regular calculator where you do all the regular mathematics. Then as you go into engineering, you will get a scientific calculator with lots of sine, cos, and tan functions for you to figure out all the numbers faster. Or if you have been into finance, then you would have a financial professional calculator. So this is the calculator that I believe that looks like a calculator for computer scientists, and I'm floored by its design. I hope they put this into production rather than dragging in and dropping stuff on screen. We can just simply type this out. It looks to me like those 8086 emulators, or those ROM burners where we used to do all the assembly language kind of coding in our microprocessor labs. It looks something like that. I hope this is commercially available. So if you want to figure stuff out, do go ahead. I don't want to. So the digital version is here. Maybe I'll put a gate or something. And see stuff. So go ahead and figure stuff out. I like the regular quantum experience page. There's a link to Slack community. So if you are not part of the Slack community, go ahead and join the Slack community. Let me see if I can pull that page up. So, oops. Yes. This is the Qiskit Slack community. There are around 900 people which are member of this community. The Slack address is qiskit.slack.com. Just go ahead and enter that and join this community. If you want me to add you here, I can go ahead and invite you. It's perfectly fine. So go ahead and join this Slack community. Link is here. What's next? Then there is getting started guide on GitHub. There's a Qiskit tutorial where you can create a hello world program. Over here you can create that on a Jupyter notebook. I guess it's already put on IBM Cloud for you to try out here. Or if you have an IBM Cloud account, you can use it on Watson Studio or DSX as it was called before. Try this out. We'll try to go deeper maybe in next episode. And there is some guide. Again, go ahead and try this out. There's another getting started guide here. There are some Python scripts available here that you can try it out, Python notebooks for you to try this stuff out, ready-made. Go ahead. So that's all that I have for today. There is a lot of material. This is the Quantum Experience website where you can do a histogram representation, bar graph by using 3 qubits and putting some gates over here and trying this stuff out. So I would encourage you. So jumping back to the first episode, thank you everyone for joining in. In Curiosity, we answered how someone can work on this trio from two-tier cities in India, or for that matter, any part of the world. Uh, Use IBM Cloud, short answer, and you will find APIs to try this out and even use it with your uh, computer. And I showed you around curated. I guess I missed the PhD movie part. It should be somewhere around. Just give me a moment. Huh? Where is it? Yeah, so this is the movie. This is the movie. I didn't want to miss it. This is the movie I was talking about, the PhD movie. So if you haven't watched the PhD movie, before watching PhD movie 2, do watch PhD movie 1. It's available to download, to purchase and download from this website. Or if you're part of one of these esteemed universities, then you may have watched it already in your campus. PhD Movie 2 has a small reference to quantum computing, about entanglement, and so Cecilia talks about entanglement in the classroom. So that's a short reference, but it's a good, fun movie. It talks about the grad student's life and how tough PhD can be. So it's good fun. Next is, if you have watched a recent BBC Horizon episode on how to build a time machine. I don't know whether you have watched or not, but you should go ahead and watch it. It's on this page, and this is a short clip of I won't play the clip, but in this episode of Horizon, they again talk a bit about quantum computing. So do go ahead and watch this BBC Horizon documentary. So I have given you enough material to cover your entire. This is the Qiskit Slack group. Just visit this page and create an account and sign in over here. So and before I end, Talia mentioned this um, uh, in her presentation at MIT as well, and I'll mention this, and I'll end with this XKCD quantum comic. Uh, One of my favorite, I must say, where it shows how many years of math are needed to understand the answers and how philosophically exciting the questions are to a novice student. And then they put a couple of topics here: special relativity, magnets, basic physics, fluid dynamics, and quantum mechanics. I can relate to this, to be honest with you, because within IBM, our leadership was asking for nominations for becoming an ambassador for quantum, and there, among the many questions that would qualify you to become an ambassador, there was one question about what is the potential application you think where you would apply if you get nominated. And I wrote about fluid dynamics. I talked about turbulence. I talked about Reynolds number. I talked about Stokes equation. I talked about how Navier-Stokes equation could be solved using quantum computing machine. I worked in an oil industry before. I have worked in an oil industry before, and when the flow of oil in a pipeline is not let's say it's turbulent. The Reynolds number the Reynolds number is more than 1,000. We usually try to approximate into a laminar flow and then try to solve this equation. It's like linearizing a quadratic equation and then trying to solve something, which ideally wouldn't make sense. So finding the solution to a problem as it is using quantum computer is the biggest difference. So I could see fluid dynamics over here on this chart, the bottom right side. There are many years of math would be required to solve this problem, and strangely, it's very low, really less exciting for students. So now you have my choice, fluid dynamics, as a potential area where you can solve this problem using quantum computer. So I would leave you with this XKCD comics for you, and maybe you can figure out what is your choice of solving a problem using quantum computer if you get access to one. With this, I wrap up the first episode of Q&A. And my last call to action for you is to send me more questions. So this is the page. Um, if you have sent me questions already, trust me, they are on the list, on the pending list. I'll answer them in next episodes. But if you haven't, please go ahead and scan this QR code, or maybe visit ibm.biz/Q&A with Naval and send me a question. Till then, meet with like-minded folks at kiskit.slack.com and stay cool as cucumber. Thank you. Goodbye.